Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mr. I'm Mr. Pierre, and I'm really happy to be joined by Mr. Menzel. Mr. Mizelle, did I say that right?
Yeah, you did, definitely.
All right.
Destin Mizelle, for sure.
Excellent. So here on the Chronicles of Mr., the community is accustomed to hear educators, and although you are not in the sphere of education, as a black man who's a student earning
Yeah.
his PhD, if I'm not mistaken, in what field exactly are you earning it in?
Psychology.
Psychology. Excellent. So our kiddos, our teachers need it. So I'll throw it over to you. Like, how did you get into the field that you're in?
Yeah, for sure, man. I guess it's been years and years in the making. So I'm originally from College Park, Georgia. I've been in Atlanta my whole entire life.
Nice.
I feel like, unknowingly, I've been pushed in the direction towards psychology, towards being in a helping profession. So how did it start? I mean, I applied to UGA, went to UGA for undergrad, had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be some doctor, and it turns out God had that in plans, but it definitely wasn't the type of doctor I was thinking of. I was thinking more of a medical doctor. Take these high level science classes and get humbled, and you say, you know what, God, that ain't it for me. So what's next? So I had a high school teacher who taught psychology, and I thought he was really dope. So I was like, you know what? Let me see what psychology is talking about. And I always would say, like, my friends would always come to me for advice, and I'm going to try psychology. End up getting into the psychology space. Didn't have many mentors. Didn't have many people in the space that I knew. So I got a mentor, Dr. Isha Metzger. She took me under her wing. She's a black woman as well. She took me under her wing at the University of Georgia. I mean, she trained me up, prepared me for a PhD program. I remember telling her, like, I just want to get a master's and that be it. And I remember her she's like, close my door. She's like, you're going to get this PhD. This is what you're going to do. And I was like, is that really what I'm going to do? And she was like, that's what you're going to do. And she said that because of the money situation. Like,
Right.
a lot of master's students, you have to pay out of pocket, whereas PhD, they'll find you funding more quickly. So end up getting in the PhD program, end up learning a lot, end up finding my place here. Now work under Dr. Candace Hargon, and she's training me to be a doctor, and I think that's dope. So I'm in a space now working with a lot of black folks, helping the community heal, and pursuing community healing. So
I think even something like that, Mr. Mizell, like kiddos who are thinking of like, all right, I'm going to earn either my associate or my bachelor. Maybe I want to go on for more education, maybe a master's or a PhD, but not knowing something as, I don't want to say as simple, but every dollar makes sense. And so to know you've got a mentor who's like, hey, close the door. This is what you're going to do. That in of itself is like knowledge is power.
For sure. And it's interesting because now even like expanding that thought process of like PhD versus masters. For one, PhD is hella school. So if you know exactly what you want to do already, then you may not get that PhD. But for me, I'm definitely very indecisive and I get bored with things very quickly. So PhD was a good route because, I mean, I'm being trained to be, like, I could be an educator, be a professor, I could be a researcher, I could be a therapist, I could be a consultant, I could be a politician. Like, the things that they're training us to do gives us, like, skills in almost any field. So, like, the reason I think now, looking back, that a PhD was good for me because of the flexibility that it gives me. Like, say if I work as a therapist for 10 years and I'm tired of it, I can just switch careers because I have the credentialing to do that. So, like, and I didn't know that at the time of choosing a PhD, but in retrospect, I wish I would have known that because it's like, yeah, that's definitely a selling point for me, that flexibility that the job gives you.
And this is what I'm hoping this podcast will help educators, is that the more you know, the better you're equipped to make whatever decision is best for you at that particular time. Because like you're saying, if you're a kiddo who, let me not say kiddo, if you're a young person, you go in, you earn your bachelor's, you just spend 4 years. Okay, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Do I want to go back in, or do I want to get out, make a little something, then go back in? Knowing what you know now, like what would you tell your younger self?
What I tell my younger self about coming into the field of psychology and doing this type of work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I would definitely, something I would say my younger self, I would prepare my younger self for the amount of self-work that was going to have to happen to be in a helping profession. Oftentimes in helping professions, we spend a lot of time focusing on other people. But I learned, especially during the pandemic, that as I was being trained, I was forced to focus on myself in ways that I feel like, typical masculinity or hegemonic masculinity didn't allow me to focus on myself. So I would find myself like in class being trained on how to be a therapist and like talking about emotion. And I was like, dang, this is difficult for me right now because not only was I not emotionally competent, but I knew I would feel emotions, but didn't know how to deal with them. And it really forced me to reckon with a lot of things that I probably have avoided throughout my whole life. And that's a difficult thing to go through, to be trained to help somebody else. And then ultimately that training also helping you too. So I would prepare myself for what that would look like for me because I was completely caught off guard. I mean, I've always been one of the self-aware friends. I've always been one of the friends who knew about emotions as it pertained to everybody else. But it came to me being a black body. That was difficult to wrestle with. So it prepared me for that because I wasn't ready for that, man. I wasn't ready.
That you're touching on something that, as an educator, I've said to others, is like, be aware of what your triggers are, because when you're in front of younger people, them jokes are going to come out. And if you are not aware of it, you're then going to inflict trauma onto kiddos who are innocent, who don't deserve it.
Yep. And that's so important. Like, awareness, for me, I think awareness is the first step. Like, being aware of some of your triggers, being aware of the emotion that you feel is that initial step towards understanding yourself and also healing from certain things, depending on what you're going through. But I would even take that a step further and say the piece of not only awareness, but moving into a space of reckoning with what these things mean could be possible. Like thinking in terms of trauma or having a response to something. Like, why in that space did you have that response? What does that response mean to you? And how do you make sense of it? Like, how do you process through that? I think that during my training, I really had to reckon with some things. And it was a time because, during the pandemic, we're all isolated. I moved to this freaking state, Kentucky, by myself. I don't know nobody here. We all in the house on Zoom. It's nothing but Zoom University and tears. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but Zoom University and really just figuring out like, okay, who am I? What am I doing in this space? What am I doing right now? How do I feel? What does that mean for me? So, and like thinking in terms of clients, like how can I help somebody in this space when I haven't even done even a portion of my own work? So that training really did make me take on a portion of my work. And of course, the work is lifelong, but it definitely pushed me in that direction and pushed me in the space of just healing in general.
Ooh, I'm sure there's someone who's listening who's like, I want to, I don't know how to. What would you say is like the first step in terms of that acknowledgement and eventual
right.
healing?
Yeah, I would say, I can speak from my own experience in terms of caretaking, right? Like I spent a lot of times taking care of a lot of people. And that's who I am. That's what I want to do in life. I want to help people heal. But I think I didn't realize when those behaviors went in overdrive. So thus I spent a lot of time looking out for my friends, trying to check in on my family. And that's normal. But when that takes place of taking care of yourself or checking in with yourself, that's when it becomes a problem. So I would say really prioritize how you feel and what you need, which is a really weird thing to ask somebody, like prioritize what you need. Because I'm sure if someone was to ask you, like, what do you need right now? You'd be kind of stuck. You'd be like, I don't know. What do I need? Because we all need something. So what do we need? I think the first step is really figuring out what you need and prioritizing your own needs, which can feel selfish, but selfish gets a bad rep. Sometimes it's okay to be selfish and really prioritize some of the things you need. So really stepping away from the caregiving behaviors or the caretaking behaviors and focusing on self. That's what the isolation during COVID allowed me to do. It allowed me to focus on myself in my apartment all the time. So, yeah.
So now that we are, I don't want to say on the other side, but further along, what are some things that you have developed or gleaned that you're like, hey, I wish I had this sooner?
Oh, communication.
Okay.
By far, communication. Prior to like coming to Kentucky, getting into my program, I used to pride myself on like cutting off situations cold turkey without even a need to talk about it. Like I'd be like, if somebody did something to me I didn't like, I'd be like, okay, you're out of it. You're done. And that'll be it. And I would go on about my life without feeling no type of hurt, no type of pain. It would just kind of be, it is what it is. And I used to love that about myself. But I got to a point where I was like, that don't make no sense. Why is it that you feel the need to cut off somebody that's been in your life for 3 years at this point, or wherever, however long they've been in my life? Why do you feel the need to cut them off because of one mishap? Because what I've learned in my program is that, or not in my program, what I've learned through my own self-work is that, I don't believe in the idea of growing out of relationship, but I do believe in the idea of growing with and through relationships. And as people change, as I change, as my friend changed, my mom changed, my brother changed, all these people are changing, so am I. So I think the real task is figuring out how to make sure that you're able to continue to grow and be safe, but also to maintain your relationships. Of course, if there's a habitual offender, then, they might have to get cut off. But being able to communicate when there's an issue, being able to talk through it, being able to humanize when there are issues, like nobody's going to be perfect. I've caused offense, and I will continue to cause offense because that's just life. Like I'll make mistakes, and I hope that people will give me grace in knowing my heart in ways that I didn't always give other people grace. So if I was to sum that answer up, because I don't want to ramble, but if I was to sum that answer up, I would definitely say like, I've learned to communicate when things go astray and also give people the same type of grace that I would want as well. And if I would have had that skill a long time ago, man, I would have gotten myself, I wouldn't have been in half of the situation I was in. So definitely not the cut off thing. Cut off
like skill?
Yeah. What is that?
I was asking, is there a skill that you've refined in that of what was I trying to say? You mentioned the communication, being able to better communicate. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, for sure. So what I've learned is that communication is the key to relationships. I don't want to think I'm this relationship guru, but I was like, I kind of cracked the code in this. What I've learned is in relationships is that we kind of let a lot of things slide that bother us instead of just instantly correcting it, instantly addressing it, and keeping it pushing. So say if there's a relationship, two people are hanging out, one person does something that another person don't like. Instead of like talking through it and not making it a big deal, a lot of people be like, noted, and then there's a straw that breaks the horse's back. Instead of just honestly addressing what's going on and telling people what you need and how it made you feel. And in doing so, the straw that broke the camel's back or the horse's back is literally because somebody stepped on your toe and did something minute. So now it's like, you'll hear people always be like, oh, I only did this. And it's like, well, they've been keeping a whole mental note of all the things you've done. And then the other side of the argument is, well, you should have told me. And I realized that you should have told me actually have a little bit of merit, because how do you expect somebody to know how to deal with you? How do you expect somebody to know how to love you if you don't communicate those needs? And that ties back into the original part that I was saying, like, I didn't really know what I need because I never prioritized myself. So getting in touch with what I needed was able to allow me to communicate those needs to some of the people I loved the most. And when they weren't able to meet those needs, or when they were treating me in ways that I feel like I wasn't able to be treated, I would just address it and move on. I've learned to stop harping on situations, right? So not only do you address situations, like there's no need to be angry for 2 weeks after addressing it. Like address it, you talk it out and you keep it pushing. And I've learned that has helped me have seamless and more meaningful relationships because, back in the day, if you used to try me up, you get cut off, or I'm not talking to you. And this is, I don't want to deal with it. That's what I always say, like, life shouldn't be so difficult. I don't want to deal with that. But actually, life is difficult, and we make it more difficult by ignoring things that are bothering us. And I just, in this space right now, choose not to ignore those things and just talk about it and normalize it. Like,
Yeah.
It's not awkward to tell people what you need and how they bothered you. Like, it's a very
Not at
normal
all.
thing. We trying to make it weird, like we trying to start an issue. And it's like, nah, it ain't that. I'm just letting you know something right quick. And that's all it got to be. It got to be no more than that.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is if you are an educator, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you would like some sort of process, either handing in papers, handing out equipment or whatever, calculators as a math teacher for me. Let your kiddos know that. Communicate that. They can't read your mind. And if they make a
Yep.
mistake, like address it that in that moment and not, you know, 2-3 days later, like, oh, kiddos, I'm mad at you because of something you did 3 days ago. And it's like, no, hey, kiddos, I like to do it this way. Please do it this way for this reason. And if they know that rationale, they're good.
For sure. And even when, like, even to take that a step further, one thing I've learned with working with kids is that kids actually like to know the why. So I was working with a client. I work with a lot of kid clients. They're like middle school, I want to say, maybe late elementary school type thing. And we'll talk about things in therapy. And one thing I realized with working with them is they like to know the why behind their doing something. For instance, if there's a mom and she tells her child, "Hey, text me when we make it home safe from school." You say those things, and it's like, yeah, do it because I said so, but also too, there's a lot of merit in doing it because your mom is concerned about your safety, and kids need to know that. So explaining that, hey, I'm telling you to do this, and this is also why I'm telling you to do it. So even applying it to educators' context, I'm telling you to submit this assignment in this type of way because of this. So giving them a reason why, because I think in the Black community, we definitely have a because I said so type of mindset. And I kind of get it, but also too, we just need a lot more as humans. We need a lot more context to be able to respect rules.
You gotta break that. Yeah. Because I think that's something that, at least what I've seen, there's some educators who forget you're talking to human beings. They're just human beings.
Yep.
And if there was a disrespectful tone or whatever aimed at you as a human being, you'd be like, nah, that's not cool. So why do you think it's cool to do it for them? And so those are things that when I'm coaching or talking to new teachers, it's like, just remember, be mindful of all this.
Yeah.
And what you just mentioned about the rationale, super important as well.
For sure.
Yeah. I'd like to ask my guests, like, what's bringing you joy, whether it's professionally or personally, just at this moment in time?
Yeah, bringing me joy. I like to travel a lot. I'm taking, travel at this point is my form of self-care. Being in the PhD program is already demanding. I mean, the reason why I don't encourage people to go in, I think PhD programs have to be an individual decision that you have to make, and I'm not about to tell nobody to go get it. Like, if that's what you want to do, you're not going to be helpful and talk you through that. But I think that it's just a demanding process to put any human being through. So I think that has to be a decision that you make for yourself. That being said, getting this PhD is something else. It requires you to be in so many different spaces. And I think that traveling has allowed me to be able to just unwind and get back in tune with God and myself in ways that I don't feel like I was able to do when I was local in Kentucky or in Lexington. So traveling brings me a lot of joy, and I do a lot of traveling.
I'm not gonna lie, there was one where you did the slide.
Yeah.
I said, bro, that's on my bucket list now.
Yeah, the rainbow slide in El Salvador, man, that was a great time, and just things like that, like just being out of the country, meeting new people, seeing how people live, seeing the joy that they have. How contagious that can be across the world. That's one of my favorite things to dabble into. And I'm getting my PhD in counseling psychology. People are always like, how do you travel? And that's a part of my studies. If you think about it, I want to be an expert in human beings and relationships and the mind, and traveling exposes me to so much outside of American culture. We in America, we communicate in some different ways. We operate in some different ways, and going across the world can help me really get a more comprehensive understanding of human behaviors and the mind and how that plays out within relationships. So traveling is my thing right now, and I hope I can keep doing it my whole life. I want to go to all the countries in the world, but we'll see.
Nice. I agree with you. When folks are able to get out of their comfort zone and able to expand and see just the world outside their block, mind blown. Yeah.
Changes so.
I also like to ask guests, if you were to create a playlist right now, I'd say 5 songs, but you could say 5 artists, 5 albums, 5 genres, if you will. What would be on that playlist?
Oh, that's so difficult, man. So I'm a music head. Like, I listen to music.
At least 5. It could be more.
Okay. I'll do albums. So, am I freezing on your end? I'm good. Okay. So the way I listen to music is that I do albums at a time. So like I do have songs that I will listen to probably on a one-off, but like I like to listen to albums at a time. So right now, let me see. My favorite album I'm listening to, Blonde by Frank Ocean. That's always in rotation year round since it dropped. I'm also listening to Her Loss, Drake and 21 Savage. I've gotten a really new affinity for Marvin Gaye, particularly his album. I want to say Let's Get It On. That's the one I've been listening to. That has To Keep You Satisfied and Distant Lover. That whole album is just butter. Like, he is smooth as butter. I just don't get that, man. He's amazing. So I would say Marvin Gaye. Let's see. I'm always having Stevie Wonder in rotation in some type of capacity. I'll say, what's Stevie Wonder? All of Stevie Wonder's discography. It's really hard to pick one. But I would say Stevie Wonder, and then, let's see, a 5th artist that I'm listening to right now. Let's go Tasha Cobbs. Her live album, A Heart, Passion, Pursuit, is always one that takes me to some good spaces too, spiritually. So that would be my top 5 if I had to pick right now in this moment. But it constantly changes. Okay. Like, it's changing all the time. All the time.
Feel you 100%. Depending on the season, depending on the mood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Frank Ocean, Drake, 21 Savage, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Tasha Cobbs.
Yeah. You listen to any of those artists?
The only person I'm not familiar with is Tasha Cobbs. So
really? Okay. Yeah, she's a gospel artist, but man, she's dope. She's real dope.
Mr. Mizelle, thank you. What I hear, and I hope folks will glean from this episode, is 1, take care of yourself.
Sure.
2, communicate. And that communication is so vital. Don't let something fester. And 3, give rationale, the why behind whatever it is that you're communicating. Would that be right? Sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right on the money.
Sweet. So anyone who's listening to this podcast, I hope you're able to glean that there's so much out there that's just waiting for you. It's a matter of you going out there and getting it. I'm hoping that Mr. Mizelle will, in the future, come back. But I'm Mr. Pierre. He's Mr. Mizelle. And this has been another episode of the Chronicles of Mr. We're out.